Well, welcome to session 4 of the Included 2020 gathering. Can you all hear me? That's great. Well done for staying the course. You can give yourselves a pat on the back if you've been with us from the first minute. And we do encourage you to stick with us for this last session, which we're calling Connect and Reflect, which is really an opportunity for us all just to reflect over what we've heard and the ideas that have been shared, the stories that have been shared, and for us also to share something from what's been going on within us, what God's been saying to us. My name is Mark Cottrell and I'm a Salvation Army officer in Sweden. I'm actually English. I'm going to be joined by Rebecca again, who you've seen, and she's a Swedish officer in England, so you can work that one out. And we've been part of the Included team that's been organising this event, and what a great team it's been. I would love to bring them all out for you to give them a round of applause and to thank them. But I do just want to highlight two people in particular. The first person is Anita, who has been helping us with the technical side of things, the Zoom side of things. We actually didn't have anybody to do this a week ago, so she's kind of saved us. And can we show Anita's face? Are we allowed to do that? Can you reveal yourself, Anita?
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Can we just give Anita a round of applause? I know you won't be able to hear that. Everyone's going wild, I promise you. But we just want to say publicly, thank you very much for helping us out and stepping in at the last minute. Anita does great work with these questions that we've been thinking about in Europe, and particularly supporting people who need support the most around these issues, particularly people who've been marginalised and have come into great difficulty because of that. So Anita, thank you for stepping up and helping us. And another person I'd like to kind of bring out is Christopher Halliday, who is an officer. Can we see him? Are we allowed to do that? You won't like me for doing this, but we want to see your face. Here he comes. Chris Halliday has been really, sorry mate. Chris Halliday, I mean, he would like to point to the team, and I know he won't be too happy with me saying this because it has been a team effort, but Chris, you've been a great leader for this team, and your vision and your leadership and the way you've led us. Sorry that we've had to kind of catch up with this. So thank you for leading us and being graceful in the way you've done that. We just thank you for organising and helping us organise this event together. So a round of applause for you, mate. Thank you very much. Everyone's going wild in their living rooms, I can assure you of that. So just in case you haven't gathered over the sessions, the purpose for the Included 2020 gathering isn't so much to create a space for debate or dialogue where we bounce different theological ideas off one another, but actually been quite deliberate to show a bias, if you like, to some of the affirming ideas and theology and some of the more perhaps alternative views that haven't been given the kind of air and the kind of space and the kind of privilege and the kind of permission that some of our perhaps inherited views and conservative positions have been given. And so unashamedly, that's what we've wanted to do. We've wanted to create a bit of space, safe space, to air some of those conversations that many of us have been having with friends, with our parents, and to air them in a more communal, organised way. And perhaps this is one of the first times that this has been done across borders, across territories. So we're stepping into new ground. But above all, the purpose for Included 2020, as far as we've been able, and we know this is out of our hands to some extent, but our big hope and our big prayer is to create a sense of sanctuary and embrace for those of us and for those of you who have been or experienced marginalisation or experienced being excluded in the Salvation Army. And it grieves us that's been the story for some people. So we wanted to create space for story, and we're so grateful that some of you were brave enough to share your stories with us. And I mean, can we ever do good theology detached from people's lives and stories. So we thank you for that. But that has been our overarching hope for the Included 2020 gatherings. We're going to spend a time of shooting around Europe, asking some questions, and we've already asked a few people who will be jumping into our Zoom calls in just a moment to answer some of our questions that we've posted to them. And some of you, if you like, will be able to put your hand up and maybe type in a question, and we might pick on you and bring you out in the open to ask a question. Well, not ask a question, but to kind of respond and give some feedback to how you've experienced the Included 2020 gathering. But just to share a little bit about myself, I'm somebody who has also changed my mind over the years. And like many of you probably actually here today, you've changed your thinking around these issues. Increasingly, I've been getting involved in the work in Sweden in lifting up these questions. And actually just this summer, if I may, I'll share a story with you. This summer, I woke up twice on 2 occasions, and my mind was taken back to a conversation at university. I went to university in Birmingham, a conversation almost 20 years ago in a lounge with a host of students. And it pains me to kind of remember the story. It's not a good memory for me, but I remember I got into an argument with my best friend's girlfriend around these issues, and I was peddling the conservative position, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I was doing it in a way that, when I look back, brings me great pain to remember that moment. But this girl, my friend's girlfriend, she stood up to me in front of all these people and argued a case. Argued the other side of the case, and the reason I tell you this story is because I don't know whether it's God or my conscience, but as I've been getting more involved in these questions and having these moments where these memories were brought to me, I felt I needed to kind of get in touch with this girl who stood up to me in that living room all those years ago. And so I messaged my friend, who's no longer with that girl. He's married to another person now. And I said, I know this sounds strange, but do you still have contact with this girl? To which he said, no. But I know someone who does have contact with this girl. So I just said, look, this is what it's about. There was this conversation about 20 years ago. I know this sounds completely ridiculous, but I just feel I need to tell her that she was on the right side and I was on the wrong side. And so these messages went via WhatsApp, and this girl actually didn't really want to have contact with me, but she asked what it was about, and the messages came back to me. And so I had to write to this girl through several people, that I just wanted to say sorry for the way I was in that moment, and that she did something brave and she did something good. And I just wanted to say that I actually have changed the way I think, and I wasn't, in words that we would use, Christ-like in that moment. She sent me a message back via these people, and it was just, I don't really remember that conversation, but thank you. And that was it. Now, of course, it sounds really strange that for many years that I did that. And I'm not telling this story to invite you into my misery, or even tell you that we all need to say sorry for those moments where we've perhaps been, on the wrong side. That's not why I tell you that story. But imagine if the church was, and in this conversation, was shaped by that kind of act of repentance, where we hold up our hands, even moments that were almost 20 years ago, to just apologize when we were on the wrong side. I'm not saying we all need to do that, but imagine if that kind of posture of humility could shape how we move forward. I just want to share to you a Bible reading, and it is a story from Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, verse 31 to 37. And of course, just to go back, repentance in this kind of place isn't just about the thing, saying sorry or holding our hands up about the things we have said. It's also about recognizing those moments where we perhaps haven't spoken out or haven't stood in solidarity with people who have been excluded or marginalized. So I share with you this story. It's in Mark's Gospel. And some people bring their friend to Jesus. He's a guy who's deaf. He can hardly walk. He's struggling to speak. And these people are begging for Jesus to heal this man. And Jesus does something really weird. He puts his finger in his ear. You know the story. He spits on the ground and touches his tongue. And I'll read from verse 34. So this is what Jesus says. He looked up to heaven, and this is Jesus, and with a deep sigh said to him, he said to the man, Ephphatha, which means be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. He told the man to not talk about it, but he was so overwhelmed that the man just could not stop talking. And people were overwhelmed. They were amazed. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. And the interesting thing about when you read this story is when you read those words that Jesus spoke, Ephphatha, you can barely say them. It's almost like you become the tongue-tied man in the story. The guy with the speech problem. Are we opened? May we be opened. I'll read to you a poem from Malcolm Guiter, a theologian in the Anglican Church and a poet, and he says this. Be opened. Oh, if only we might be. Speak to a heart that's closed in on itself. Be opened, and the truth will set you free. Speak to a world imprisoned in its wealth. Be opened. Learn to learn from poverty. Speak to a church that closes and excludes and makes rejection its own litany. Be opened, open to the multitudes for whom I died, but whom you have dismissed. Be opened, 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 how you sigh. And still we do not hear you. We have missed both cry and crisis. We make no reply. Take us aside, for we are deaf and dumb. Spit on us, Lord, and touch each tongue-tied tongue. Let's just spend a minute and then we'll burst into a conversation across Europe. Just to, again, have a pause, and a minute will be painful for the extroverts and too short for those of you who are introverts. Let's just have a minute where we acknowledge maybe those moments where we haven't spoken or we haven't stood in solidarity, or maybe moments where we've perhaps said things that have caused some kind of exclusion or marginalization. Let's just spend that moment now. So Father, here we are. We give you this moment. Bring to light those things and those moments. And if there's any of us who just need to hold our hands up and say sorry, or to say that we're on the wrong side, may we just have this moment now, Lord. So Father, as we move on, may we be opened. Open our hearts, open our minds, open our ears, and open our mouths. We pray. Amen. Okay, I feel I've been speaking a lot, but just before we start bringing some people in, We have had some attitudes across this event that we've tried to kind of make front and center. And that is just to encourage you all to be fully present, not with what's just been heard, but also with what God is saying to us and what the Spirit is saying to us in the moment. We encourage you to continue to have a sense of discovery and, an openness to learning. And ultimately, we want this to be an encouraging space. So as we go into this time, we're going to be asking a number of questions, and Rebecca's going to come in just a moment. But the first question, and we've got some people across Europe who are going to jump in. Anita's going to bring them online in just a moment. The first question we're asking is, from everything that we've heard over the course of the two events, the stories, the theology, and all that kind of stuff, what has been most encouraging? What has been most inspiring and uplifting? So I think we have some people ready to come in. And the first one is Martha. Can we bring her in? Are you there, Martha? I can see her face. Can we unmute Martha?
Hello. Hello, I am Martha Maria. Do you hear me? Yeah, that's good. It has been a really great experience to follow these two webinars. And the question to me is, what has been encouraging and exciting about this? I am a salvation officer in Norway, serving at the Officers Training College. I've been serving as a corps officer for many years before that. The encouraging and exciting parts is the story we have heard, and very interesting, exciting is the army at Pride, and the best of all, that this event has taken place. And thank you to all who has participating to make this possible. There is one sentence from last Sunday that I have been thinking about, and I have to work it out, and I have to, and I think we should do more thinking about that. One of the I can't remember who it was who said it, but someone said, "To be gay is not the problem. To be evangelical is." And my question is, how can we, as a Salvation Army, work on an including Salvation Army evangelism? Evangelical Christianity is a lot of things, but we have to point out that the evangelical tradition has meant a lot of quitting slavery, has meant a lot for the women's movement, for the social service and social reforms. And we should stay in this tradition and not in another kind of evangelical tradition that we see today, who is closing, who is narrowing the room for people of all kind. We should, a Salvation Army evangelism, in my opinion, should be in front of fighting against discrimination and exclusion of people of different sexuality. What I see as very promising and important and as a very good source to do something, to open up, to be inclusive, is to look at the making of theology in the Salvation Army, as Dean Pallant has written on, and the source of the starting point of Salvation Army theology should be the practical life, the human experience, what people really struggle about, and I think that is my. I want to see more of that kind of thinking, that making of theology, also in on inclusion.
Thank you, Martha.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're not going to comment over what people have been saying. We're just going to try and bring as many people in as possible. So we're going to actually shoot over outside of Europe and bring in Jason from Australia. You imposter, but you're very welcome. Are you there, Jason? Can we bring you online? This is very much like the Eurovision, isn't it, when you have an Aussie?
Hey, Mark. Look, thanks to the team and all the presenters today, and for making me welcome here in Melbourne, Australia. It's great to be with you. Look, this has been a really exciting experience for me, having grown up in the Salvation Army my whole life, just to be exposed to different thinking, and it's been a really great experience. One of the poems that means a lot to me is a David Frost poem called "I Took the Road Less Traveled," and I think that's perhaps some of the journey that we've been on over the last couple of weekends, hearing the theological perspectives, hearing a global context within the Salvation Army. It's really opened up my mind to the possibilities and given a lot of hope for the future. It's been really encouraging to get, one of the things I've loved is getting a teaser on Kathy Baldock's new book, and to hear some of the research that she's been doing, as well as some of the homegrown research here in Melbourne, Australia. One of the phrases which really stuck out to me was that it's in our DNA, the Salvation Army's DNA, to be inclusive. So thank you for creating this space for discussion and continuing the conversation.
That's great, Jason. So we've got a few. Do we have anyone we can bring on, Rebecca? We'll see how this works.
So we have a few comments in the chat, which I would like to share with you. We're still getting people to raise their hands and figuring that one out. But we welcome you to do that throughout this session. So just raise your hand and we can unmute you to do that. But some of the reflections that have come in terms of the encouragement that people have had is that the conversation is taking place. Also that, hang on, I'm just going to get it all up here. Oh, here we go. Someone is talking about they're surprised by the courage that they've heard from panelists to engage in the discussion towards inclusion. I understand the challenges that the global organization faces, but also many other organizations have done so and are willing to do so today. So that's encouraging. We have also got encouraged by the feeling that there is a spirit of repentance for past positions which has caused harm that we were not loving. There's also a comment about how Dean and Bull summed up some of the complexity of the army systems well. And I think if we get Ben Battle to get ready to speak, whilst we're doing that, I'll just read one more comment. So to see that there's a recognition that this is a complex topic that needs to be addressed, that there are willing people to talk about it, at least some aspects of it, in terms of sexuality and gender. And the greatest encouragement of someone else is that the conversation is actually happening, that we are concerned that there might be and knowledge for those who are in the LGBTQI and still soldiers that might be upsetting and damaging to those who are still being excluded and who are present tonight. So that's a few of the things on the chat. Can we give Ben Battle access to speak? And we'll see if we can hear you. Have you got a comment on what's encouraged you, Ben?
3 minutes max, Ben.
Yeah, just short.
Ben?
So Ben Battles raised his hand. Can we give him...
Hello.
Hi, Ben, go for it.
Hi. Yeah, you actually read out, I put a comment on the chat as well. It's just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, brilliant. I think it's just encouraging for me. I've been part of the Salvation Army for my whole life. And over my teen years especially, I've heard a lot of my friends and a lot of opinions that the Salvation Army is viewed as homophobic. So I've always had this uneasy sense that we are sort of institutionally homophobic. So the fact that now I've seen that we are having these conversations about inclusivity is really encouraging for me. So yeah, I think that's everything that I've got to say.
Thank you, Ben. That's great to hear. Rebecca, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, sure. So we have we have another comment, and then we'll move on to the next. People say there's so many people joining us, and there's reflections from last week, and many of them are about Catholics research and the theology and the misinterpretations. We've had lots of comments on that's been really encouraging, and the fact that that's been highlighted. Someone else is saying 3 generations, all Salvationists of my family are engaged with this webinar right now. It's amazing, past, present, and future. So it's just spanning out, isn't it? It's widening the conversation, and people are encouraged by that, by it's being uplifted. But I think also it's worth thinking about the way that some things that we've heard or some things that we have been exposed to in these webinars and in the different sessions might have caused some challenge or made us uncomfortable to some extent. So we've got to remember that in this room, there's people who are sitting with a range of views, but all obviously are interested in the subject of inclusion. But there are some challenging things that we've been hearing, and those will be different depending on where we come from, of course. But we're going to start to welcome Arno from Denmark. I think he's in Copenhagen, and I'd just like to ask you, Arno, what's been challenging or what has been uncomfortable to hear for you? And for all of those who we're bringing in, if you want to introduce yourself and your connection to the Salvation Army or who you are, please do so. Introduce yourself as well. So over to you, Arno, if you with us.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm a civilian with Salvation Army in Copenhagen, but I'm also the co-president of the European Forum of LGBT Christian groups. So we work with more than 40 groups from all denominations in Europe. But also, when I look at the challenges, I have to say I come with baggage because I was founding and leading a small network of churches and was thrown out because I'm an out gay man. So I know how it feels when church are not facilitators, but regulators. And I think that's very much my way into it. I find it extremely hard to hear that things just have to take time. I understand it, as I also myself have worked internationally for many years, but still I'm asking, where is the prophetic voice of the church? 72 years ago, the Kinsey Scale came out. 51 years ago, we had Stonewall riots. 39 years ago, we had AIDS. 31 years ago, we had civil partnerships coming through in Denmark. We've had decades of things going on in our society, but the church has in many ways not wanted to bother. And one of the reasons why I came out at last was also I could not cope with hearing that the church has not moved on for the last 30 years in the evangelical wing of the church that I belong to. And that's been very painful. So as we are taking time What are we going to do for us who are LGBT? I lost my international ministry as a minister. No evangelical church wants me. What are we going to do about us? Are we just here to try to survive, or will we be liberated at some point? When is the church going to have a voice that is for us? How long do we accept discrimination in Salvation Army and also other places, where people have to live secret lives, or they know where they can find the door? Because if you really come out and if you want to love, and if you fall in love with somebody else, you do not stand a chance, here or somewhere else in the evangelical world. We all fear the consequences, so we do not live openly and transparently, and I think it really hinders our faith. When we hear tonight that there are somebody receiving emails about these people, how can I feel safe going to any core when there's people who feel that these people that I belong to are not real, are not honest, or do not really go to heaven? Because if you're talking about these people, then we are already put out. So for my European work, I'll stop now. I'm thinking very much, how can we ensure the church is not just welcoming? You're welcome to come, pay your tithe, serve the coffee, and then otherwise keep your life quite private. When are we going to go to be inclusive, where there is no glass ceiling? I can be who I am and not lose soldiership or officership. When can we become affirming, where we actively work for social justice, for us, but also for other groups? That was my comment.
Thank you so much, Anna, and for sharing that so honestly, and for also speaking into us as someone who are part of a network that's kind of further down the line. And I think that's been really helpful of you sharing that as well with us, that there are other ways to link in terms of across Europe and outside of our denomination as well, because this is not just the Salvation Army issue, is it? It is an issue for the church and a challenge for our times. And we have to address that. So thank you for bringing that perspective in as well as your lovely face from Copenhagen. So we're now gonna jump to Northern Ireland and hear from Liesl Baldwin. So have we got Liesl with us? Can you just share, Liesl, something that's been challenging or uncomfortable for you, hearing some of the sessions over the last couple of weeks? With us?
Yeah, sure. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, so I'm an officer in the UK. For the last 3 months, just almost 3 months, I've been a corps officer here in Belfast Temple. And my passion is for peace building. My passion is for reconciliation. But one of the things that has really kind of shouted out at me from the discussions that I've heard in last week and this week is this little word ally, which we've used in many ways, and we've used it in some of the conversations, the comments that people have put on Facebook, and I think it worries me that we're using a word that actually speaks about having sides, and I'm grappling with what is it that bothers me about it. And I think the truth is that language shapes culture. How we speak into this conversation can really shape the temperature in which the Salvation Army goes forward. So absolutely, we want to speak against injustice. We want to speak for the voiceless. We want to be people of inclusion, but even in saying included, that already speaks about them and us, people who are excluded and people who are included. And I guess it's grappling with that to say, somehow we have to communicate that we don't want sides, that it's about mutual understanding. And I think for me, that's been the thing that's jumped out more than anything, where I feel uncomfortable that we may win a battle of inclusion and actually lose the deeper thing that God wants to do in us. I think there's a key that Dean and Bo tonight really highlighted was the need for us as Christians to learn to disagree. And that's something that I'm exploring personally in my own studies. But how do we disagree with each other? Because we already disagree on many things as a Salvation Army. And I'm uncomfortable with thinking that we all have to agree, that somehow actually God is teaching us something deeper that we see modeled in Jesus and in the church, in the early church. How could they love each other even if they fundamentally disagreed about something? That God's grace is able to embrace the different sides and bring mutual understanding, rather than thinking we're either one or the other. We are either excluded or included. The truth is that all of us are included to some extent and excluded in other ways. And for me, if we can think about the importance of our own personal discipleship, in order to break down any barriers that we may have institutionally, within local churches, within congregations, it's about knowing our theology, but it's also about learning to speak gracefully, whether we're the ones who have excluded or whether we're the ones who've been excluded. And I think that is a key that I would want to foster more in our dialogue. That absolutely we need to right the injustice. We need to speak in repentance. We need to, as a Salvation Army, acknowledge the role that we may have played in excluding people. But as individual salvationists, we need to seek Jesus, and we need to learn to be shaped by him, so that whatever contribution we make doesn't emphasize sides, but emphasizes grace and emphasizes forgiveness, that we will forgive those who have excluded us, that we will forgive decisions that the army have made, and that we are seeking to gain mutual understanding rather than being on one side or the other. I hope that helps. It was hard to articulate, but there was something in that word ally that bothered me, that I wanted to address and challenge.
Thank you, Lisa. I think you highlight something important there. And actually, it is about what posture we come to these questions with. And wherever we stand, we have to have a posture of humility and willingness to listen, and do that in a graceful way. So thank you for that, and for sharing your reflection. We've had a few more voices that felt challenged or uncomfortable, and I'll just read some of those out. I'm a little disappointed about the way they ignore gay people in Africa, India, and Asia. Those countries have also different views on women, children, handicapped, but we are still keen to keep our statements about them. I went to Pride to give hope to the oppressed out there, but they have no voice. So again, it's that kind of hurt and protective measure and feelings about the gay and rainbow community out there. Another one that I think is worth highlighting is that the event, the challenging thing or the uncomfortable thing is that the fact that the focus is more or less only on homosexuality. I believe this also reflects the attitude in the Western society. There are other segments that feel the need to keep the sexuality hidden, even in places that are gay positive. Another comment is also, which kind of echoes Arno's story. It's uncomfortable to think that we are still so far away from being affirming, and it's not true to say that we are homophobic, and will remain so until we affirm same-sex relationships. Whether we see it in ourselves, it will be how others view us. So there are some really challenging things that are coming, yeah, lots of stories. So I don't know, Mark, if you've got anything more to add, or if you want to move on, but I'll pass it over to you.
Well, not anything on that question. I think there's a lot of difficult things and a lot of challenging things that we need to talk about, and it's also worth recognizing what Dean said, that even this is not the greatest kind of platform for us to be able to chew over these things and to talk through these things. But we did want to kind of give space to kind of not edit out the tough stuff, And you'll have opportunity. Actually, we're going to send out a survey to give everybody another opportunity to kind of, answer some of these questions that we're asking now. But just because time is of the essence, we want to move forward. And in terms of our last question, to be a bit more positive, and perhaps, so this is the question, I'll just get with it, is what are we hoping for? What are you longing to see? What is our prayer going forward? And so we have a couple of people that we're going to bring in, and 3 minutes max if you can. So we're going to go to Portugal. And who we got coming in? I can't see. Are they there? The name's not on the sheet. Are they there, Anita? The next person?
I'm Filipa. Sorry, my name, my captain is. It's what we have for our Zoom meetings. Sorry about that. I couldn't change it. Right. Well, it has been definitely very challenging. Last week was a bit of a shock when I started watching the session, but it became so encouraging. It was really lovely to see how everything just moved from being a shock because of our context, which I will briefly explain very soon, and how everything moved to sort of, I don't want to say making sense, but at least to me it made sense. And I just need to say that in our little corner of Europe, that's because we don't live the reality of LGBTIQ+ in our cores and communities, at least until now. And there are two reasons, and some of the reasons have already been mentioned by some of you. But the first, and concerning our country, which I can only speak of, which is Portugal, is that we are a very small country with a small army representation, but a good one. And we come from a very conservative, nominal Catholic country, where the topic of inclusion of the LGBT community in church contexts is a non-subject. It's just a non-subject. And in fact, whenever any sorts of talks or situations come up, they're rapidly pushed aside, because in general, the mentality is formatted and culture continues to have a heavy impact on this subject. Unfortunately, within the evangelical community, the issue in Portugal is no different. It doesn't change. It's a non-subject in general, I say. I can't, and obviously won't speak for everyone, but for me, it's a concern that Christians don't seem to be willing to hear what God has to say concerning the whole spectrum of inclusion, especially to this generation. And our children and youth are being brought up and having to deal with these gender issues. So for them, it's kind of becoming part of the norm in the society to have this diversity, whether because it's friends they know, family, or themselves going through this. And the problem is when they come to us, the church, right? When they come looking for guidance and when they come looking for views, how do we respond appropriately? And obviously, sometimes this response is very personal. But when it comes to being part of the church and within the church context, that's when we feel the barrier in how we respond. And in the last months, I've been learning a lot about how to listen, how to better listen and break the boundaries of what we're expected to do and how we're expected to act as a church, and being more like a follower of Jesus in every sense. And it gives me hope that I'm not alone in this search. When the possibility of this event came up, the majority of the Portuguese officers, definitely all the younger, if we can consider ourselves the younger generation of officers, felt the need to participate and are here. They have been here. So if you talk, practically all the officers from Portugal are attending this event. I think it says a lot. I think it says a lot of how we are willing to listen, how we are willing to be challenged, and recognizing the importance that inclusion, the topic of inclusion, has for our ministries. And even though we may differ in our opinions, even spouses differ in the opinion in this subject in particular, but I feel that we are wanting to see God moving and be willing to listen to the voice of the Spirit in this matter. It's not something that it can't be a non-subject. It's something we have to deal with and that we have to approach it like Jesus would. So I want to listen. I want to understand how to better serve, honor, and represent Jesus in my community, whatever shape that community may take. And I want to be prepared to be more inclusive. So this event has given me great tools, a great platform where we can share ideas, we can share conversations, we can share prayer, and to know that we're not alone and that we can do our part, but we need to keep listening.
Thank you so much, Philippa. And what a great gift we have in this moment to take that posture of listening. And we just echo your hopes and prayers. I'm sure many of us across the Zoom call. So thank you for joining us from Portugal and also giving us a little insight into the Salvation Army in Portugal. So next up, we're gonna shoot back to Northern Europe, to Denmark, and we have Henny Kastrup. So can we bring Henny Kastrup up? Henny, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Wonderful, yes, go for it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well, as he said, my name is Henny, and I live in Denmark with my wife, Anna. And I grew up in a typical Salvation Army family, big family, and luckily, and they have all accepted me and my wife 100%. Our parents are retired officers, and my sisters work for the army in Poland and Germany, and I also have family in the army in Norway. And years ago, I even planned myself to become an officer. However, I left the army because as a gay person and a soldier, I felt forced into either living alone or leaving. And also, I was very afraid in that process of going to hell for being gay. The army kept saying that I was always welcome, but as I saw it, only on limited terms. And the year I married, I was so happy, but it was also one of the saddest years in my life because I knew that I could not receive a blessing in my spiritual home and the church I grew up in. But I was very thankful when after the wedding, my officer friend, her name is Birgit, she gave us a blessing, and that really meant everything to me. But as Mark asked, what's my big hope and longing for the future regarding this subject? Well, it's pretty much a period that I would like to, that there is a period of healing and mutual understanding, where there is a frequent and open dialogue in focus. And I really believe that this needs to be on the agenda of the Army, both globally, but certainly also locally. And not only once, but until we have reached the goal. Never, because this will not go away. The solution is not silent, but it's simply a redefinition of love for each other and of God's love for us. So my biggest hope for the Army is a church where people can get married no matter the gender, or be soldiers and officers just like any other persons. So a place where God's love for us all is in the center. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henny, for sharing. Rebecca, do we have any comments that you might want to share, or anyone we can bring in?
Yeah, just quickly, we have a few longings and dreams and hopes, and I'll just read out a few. We were raised up to be the church of the marginalized. Our founders fought for that even when it hurt. I long for a Salvation Army that is known for that once again. I think that's quite powerful. Another longing for people to be accepted as their authentic selves. For young people growing up in the army, not having to hide, not to be emotionally damaged or even ostracized by the Salvationist parents. And actually, there's been quite a few comments about young people and the younger generation and growing up. And I think there's this sense of an older generation who has been partitioned with a lot of hurt and historical abuse in that sense, and a younger generation to be set free from that and not having to live under those same So kind of the protective measures over our young people. I think that's really wonderful. Another one is I hope to at one point feel included for other people to be included. No, to at one point feel included and for other people to be included, to feel that they can belong in the Salvation Army. For the shorter term, my wish is for dialogue and openness. So it's kind of recognizing this, that this is a journey. Hope and prayers that the Army to understand the need for inclusion and acceptance for all, just as Jesus would have done. And this desire or longing to keep the conversation going. Somebody said, I don't think we should be concerned about the term ally. I'm reminded of Desmond Tutu's quote about the elephant standing on the mouse's tail and how we need to choose a side because the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. She's interesting. My hopes, prayers and longings going forward are for our local communities to engage in active rainbow inclusive conversation and action. Even though this may not be the smoothest transition, I also hope for these local communities to develop and motivate international actions. So there's loads there, there's loads of dreams, there's loads of hope, I think. We will continue to highlight some of those. Mark, did you have anything else that you would like to have highlighted in those things?
I think there's so much to say and there's so many more comments coming. So just to recognise that this is something that people want to talk about. And, you know, I'm sure the speakers who've spoken today are open for you to message them or get in contact with them. And so do that if you want to talk further. Don't bombard them, everybody, but do take contact with anybody who would like to have more exploration with on these topics. And I think it's very clear that, you know, these are questions that are front and center to our understanding, not just of theology but of mission. It's about the future of the church, and you know, it's even more than that. It's about what kind of Christians are we going to be. These questions are so intrinsic to how the world perceives us, and how we move and emerge out of this incredibly, you know, this moment of upheaval, this cultural moment, that we sit in this missional moment. So these are missional questions. These are about, you know, what our Christianity and what we're going to be perceived as, and that word Christ-likeness, are people going to see it? Rebecca, you got your hand up.
I will highlight another comment which I think is helpful. Someone said, Dean mentioned that he knows many Salvation Army officers whose children are gay. So this comment is now from a parent and an officer who has a trans son. Now what is my prayer going forward? Every day I feel I'm letting him down because I continue to serve within an organization that will not completely include him. For many of us, this means that as a parent, we have this constant battle within us. I long to belong to a church that says, we are sorry. And I think there's two things there. There's raising the awareness of trans. We've talked a lot about homosexuality, gay, lesbian and bisexuals, but also just to highlight that transgender issues as well. But also, I think that comment kind of sits with the longing of, you know, that mother's heart, or that highlights the tension that is on so many levels. It's personal for people, it's hurtful for people, but it's also this institution, and we have to find a way where we can navigate those things. And when those two worlds collide, how much longer do we have we got hopes for something to change, or for how much longer can I navigate that tension? And I think that kind of hits the head on the nail of how important these discussions really are, and the dialogue that we need to have, because there is a tension, and once that tension becomes too strong, I think we're losing some very, very good people. But we're not just losing people, we are actually causing harm, and that's not Christ-like. So we have to wrestle with those thoughts and wrestle with those contexts that we see ourselves in. Mark, unless you had any other questions.
No, I think we need to honor the people's time.
Yeah. So you might think, is that it? What now? And how does this conversation continue? Or where do I take all this? And we want to encourage you now by sharing some good news with you, hopefully. And I'm going to pass over to Chris Halliday, who sits in Australia. And he's got some really encouraging news for how you can link in and continue to have this conversation and be equipped in it. So over to you, Chris, in Australia.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rebecca. It's been incredible to sit under this great teaching and information, and to see the questions and coming through, and to see just how meaningfully people are engaging with this conversation. And indeed, it seems like we've tapped into something in that people have been really looking for and longing for the opportunity to have a dialogue, to connect, to share with others, to find out more about this issue, to really wrestle it through. And so that's been, I think, one of the most encouraging things to see as these few weeks have played out, is the willingness of people to come with an open mind and open heart, and the strong desire to truly to find out more, to hear more, to let the stories and the information impact them. And so we wanted to allow all of us to be able to continue in that journey, to continue exploring, wrestling, reading, engaging, and connecting. So the Included team has put together some new resources so that this event isn't the end of the story. In fact, it's very much just the beginning. I'm going to share my screen here, if I can. So we're launching today a new Facebook and website, and I'll start with the website, the web page. Here we have the includedpage.com, the web page of Included. It's a space for reflection, theological exploration, story sharing, and connection for all of those who are wanting to be a part of this journey, to see that everybody right across the gender and sexuality spectrum may be fully included in the Salvation Army. Something that we felt was missing in our current space is a place where people can come for some of these information resources, some of this content, a landing place for people who are doing really good work on this stuff. There's some great work coming out from Salvationists and people involved in the Salvation Army right around the world, but there isn't really anywhere to find it or anywhere to put it. So we've created the Included page. And here you'll find a range of resources. Here we've got things that people are writing, people from around the world, looking at this from a theological perspective, unpacking it by using the view of doctrine. We have a section dedicated to testimony, and something we've picked up as we've journeyed through these few weeks is the power involved in story. So we have a specific session here where you can come and find people's testimonies from around the Salvation Army world, including some of the testimony that we heard last week. We also have a place for other resources. You'll see here we've started us off with highly recommended, of course, Dean's book, To Be Like Jesus, and Changing Our Minds, which Mark referred to there too. You can also get in contact with us or other people, and there's a way to tap into some of the great Facebook groups and other forums that exist for conversation in the Salvation Army. And that's important, the connecting to other groups, because we don't want in any way to be duplicating some of that other stuff that's out there. And that's particularly important as I take us now to our new Facebook page, also called the Included page. You can find us on Facebook by looking up Included or Included page. And again, the importance here is that we weren't seeking to duplicate some of what's out there. There are some fantastic forums. There's Salvos for a More Inclusive Church. There's the UK inclusion page. There's a fantastic page for those people in Nordic countries where there's lots of discussion and dialogue happening. But what we were wanting to seek to create is a place where we can share with you the resources that are available to help you continue these conversations in your local context, to help you get informed, to maybe run some things with your small group or in your core in your neighbourhood. So here on the included page, it's how you can keep up to date with what we're up to as we look to releasing some of the videos of these past 2 weeks. They'll be available here on the Facebook page and also on the website. You'll also have all of the latest information we have as we release new resources or become aware of resources, or as people submit their own work, their own theological or doctrinal perspectives. So that's all there on the included page. So we would really encourage you to join. And one of the things you'll see there, which we'll pick up on, is an opportunity to give your feedback. We would love to hear from you. And so the links are both on the Facebook page and the web page to help us really shape what's coming, where to from here, because we really see this, as I say, not as an endpoint, but as an early step on this continual process of allowing people to dialogue, to share, to learn, to understand, and connect in a meaningful way. So I have for you the pages there, www.includedpage.com, on facebook.com, included page, and you can always contact us by email at includedteam@gmail.com. So you'll find us there. And while I still have the mic, I just want to take a moment again to give a really big thanks to the whole team that's been involved in putting this event together. It's often said, but it really is the case in this situation, that this event could not have happened without the incredible team of people who came together and gave of themselves, gave of their time, and really invested amongst all the other things that are happening in our world at the moment, particularly in Europe, gave of themselves to really raise up this opportunity for people to be able to share and contribute. So I'm very thankful for incredible friends and allies who have been a part of bringing this, so that we can all have a voice, so that we can all raise these important questions and all come together to find a way forward. So thanks, Rebecca and Mark, the whole team, and I'll hand back to you now.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's great to have you with us from Australia, speaking into this Europe gathering, but you're very much part of it, having served in Sweden for years. So we are coming to a close of this gathering, but it's very much a start, actually, like Chris said. And just as we conclude, I was just thinking about a comment or a thing that General Eva Barrows said once, and she said that any good Salvation Army officer should always leave you with a challenge. So that's what I was thinking I would do now as we draw to a close of this fantastic event, where we have lifted the lid on some very important stuff. And I'll say this: if you are identifying as a part of the rainbow community, as an LGBTQI, we just first want to say that thank you for gifting yourself, who you are, as you are, to the Salvation Army and to the church. You have taught us so much, you have so much more to teach us, and you have so much that you can contribute to the mission of God. We need you, and we thank God that despite the tension, the pain and the hurt, and the things that you've had to live with and been through, we thank God that you will continue to live gracious and humble lives. Please accept this challenge to continue to live out your Christ-likeness within the church and within the communities and within the spheres of networks that you find yourselves in. Don't turn your back on God, don't turn your back on church, and don't turn your back on the Salvation Army, because we need you. We need you to speak into this movement, and we need you to help us move in directions that are unknown. We need you in local leadership. We need you in roles as youth sergeants, as officers, as worship leaders, as humble, passionate followers of Christ. And I also challenge you with forgiveness. I ask that you will forgive. And when I say forgive, I mean by no means justifying the acts that have been against you or justifying the abuse. An act of accepting forgiveness is to allow the stronghold that words and abuse have had in your life to be let go and to be set free. I challenge you with that. If you're straight, my challenge to you today is to come out of the closet and become an ally, whether you like that word or not. Someone who is courageously and in love is choosing to educate oneself, to learn, to study, to listen, and to lead conversation towards inclusion in the spheres and the networks that you are in, to influence and to become an oasis for those who have experienced exclusion. I also challenge you with doing no more harm and to allow, by the influence you have, to let everybody to sit at the same table and being heard. For all of us, I will leave us with the challenge to steer away from the Salvation Army culture that's often ingrained in us, to think that change can only happen once we have a top-down decision. I'll tell you now that change is happening, and change has already started, and change is happening by those conversations that we're having right now and will be having in the next few weeks or months. You can have an impact in your local community, wherever you find yourself, in your context, and you can be a leader on these issues wherever you are, despite what the Salvation Army structures and institutions are doing. You can become an oasis, or you could be a person who lives out the purposes that God has given on your life, wherever you are, despite some of the tensions that we feel. So as we conclude, my prayer is for us all to continue to exercise that instinct of love that we've heard of, whether you be excluded, whether you have been persecuted, whether you have been exclusive in your thinking, or whether you find yourself in a transition of not actually knowing what to believe at this point, or not knowing how to react to everything that you've heard or been exposed through those sessions. So my prayer is that we will, wherever we find ourselves, we will listen for that voice of love. We will listen to that instinct of love that will lead us through, because Christ is the mind, and we, the church, are just discerning what his mind is. And we do that by graciously putting us in a position where we listen and seek for ways to love better. So let me just send you with a short blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord turn his face towards you, and may he give you peace. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you soon on the Facebook page or wherever you might link with us. Thank you so much. Good night, and God bless.